Welcome back to the Michael Lofton Show on Reason and Theology. Wow. I have an alarming video to show you that I want to review. I'm still a little in shock from it. It is Bishop Strickland's speech that he offered a few days ago, maybe a week or so ago, at the Rome Life Forum. The full transcript and the video was just posted, let's see, yesterday. And if you recall, I did do a review of some excerpts from the video. However, now we're receiving more than just some excerpts. We're going to have the full video. So I'm going to play the beginning part and we're going to review it because it's during the beginning that we have a very alarming segment from Bishop Strickland. By the way, I do want to remind y'all, hit that subscribe button, help me grow this channel. There's going to be a lot of people who don't like this video. I guarantee there will be people who unsubscribe. So help me offset that by hitting the subscribe button and supporting the channel. Best way to do it, patreon.com/Reason and Theology, or the GoFundMe or PayPal link there in the show notes. Believe me, I'll definitely need some help after doing this video. Okay. I am going to begin to review this thing. We're going to start around the 2-minute 35-second mark. And we're going to go over a very troubling letter that Bishop Strickland felt it was wise to promote at this conference. This letter is filled with demonic vitriol against Christ's church. Explicitly, the letter affirms Sedevacantism, in addition to many other false accusations that the accuser of the brethren continues to throw out against the successor of St. Peter. I don't know why, but Strickland thought it was worth promoting this letter and did not have any opposition to it, did not correct it, did not rebuke it. Rather, he decided to share it and did not have any issue with it. In fact, he praised the person who wrote it. And again, he's sharing the letter as if this is a productive contribution to his talk, and nowhere corrects any of its errors, so he doesn't show himself in opposition to it. Rather, it sure seems that he is on board with it, which is quite alarming. We've seen Strickland say some pretty wild things already, but this is on another level. It all began with Strickland in about a year and a half ago or so. In a document on LifeSite News, Bishop Strickland publicly accused the papacy of teaching heresy and Desiderio Desideravi. It all began then. Prior to that, I had not seen anything wild from Bishop Strickland. I had him on the show multiple times. But at that point, when he came out and publicly accused, and in fact falsely accused, the papacy of teaching heresy, I had to say, okay, yeah, no, I'm not going to have this guy back on. This is wrong. This is contrary to what the Eighth Ecumenical Council tells us. We cannot do this. And he's just factually wrong because there's no heresy in the document anyway. And from that point on, it has been downhill for Bishop Strickland. We've been seeing problem after problem after problem with him. But frankly, I can't tell you that I've seen something on this level when it comes to problematic things. This is on another level. Let's just go ahead and review it. All right, let's begin. Around the 2-minute 35-second mark.
When they, a deep believer, a lover
I'm sorry, I listened to everything at 2 times speed.
of.
So now he's speaking about the person that he's about to read their letter, and he's saying they're a deep believer.
When they, a deep believer, a lover of our Lord Jesus Christ, a true disciple a lover of the church, a lover of the Petrine office. And
You hear all this. The person that he's about to read, he is describing as a lover of Christ, a lover of the church. The demonic vitriol that this person is about to spew. Bishop Strickland is saying this is from a guy who loves the church, loves Jesus. Just keep that in mind.
in every aspect of our Catholic faith, as Christ has ordained the Catholic Church. But this dear friend sent, I think you'll agree after I read it, a deeply challenging message to me.
And notice how he describes it. It's deeply challenging. He doesn't say it's deeply demonic. He doesn't say it's deeply erroneous. He just says it's deeply challenging.
Me. And really, I share it because it's not just to me, it's to all of us.
Boom, you heard it right there. So he's sharing this for the benefit of everyone there. He's putting his approbation behind what you're about to hear. Because he's saying, look, this isn't just for me privately. This is for all of you to benefit from. So if he felt that this wasn't something to share to everybody, he would have just kept this as a private letter written to himself. And if he had disagreed with it, he would most likely omit the demonic aspects of the letter. Rather, he includes them instead. He sees this as productive and beneficial for everyone there. Now, let's hear the contents of this vomit that this person wrote down on paper.
It says some strong things, but I want to assure you that this friend has a deep love for Christ, his church, for Pope Francis.
There it is again. Instead of saying this person needs an exorcism, I'm going to be visiting him soon. This person is spewing vomit from the mouth of Satan. Instead of saying those things, he wants to reassure us this person loves Jesus and he's a good and holy man.
You may not hear that in some of these challenging words, but it's spoken out of love. And I think that in listening to Bishop Schneider just recently, wonderful bishop, he's a hero.
A hero? A hero? Have you read Credo? Well, he endorsed it. Never mind. He may still not have read it, but yeah, he endorsed it. He, Scott Hahn, and a few others endorsed that hot garbage. And it's bad. Schneider, another one, very disappointed by in the direction he's gone. I've covered quite a few videos of Bishop Schneider recently. So if you want to know how problematic he has become, maybe check those out.
But he said for us as bishops to think of Pope Francis as an elder brother who needs our prayers.
He does need their prayers. But all this other stuff, yeah, I don't know about that.
And for all of us as members of the flock of the church, and I'm, as St. Augustine says so beautifully, bishops are part of the flock, but also called to be leaders of the flock. And as you know, it's a tough balancing act. But this friend speaks out of love for Pope Francis, for the church. And we, I believe, all have to do the same, but face the challenge.
So he is describing what we're about to hear as speaking love towards Pope Francis. Wow. Wow. Oh, okay. This must be a wonderful letter, right?
That you will hear. So this letter simply begins, Francis is an expert at producing cowards. By preaching dialogue and openness and a welcoming spirit, and by highlighting always his own authority. He makes it seem that one who opposes him and what he proposes is an enemy of the church.
Then why hasn't Vigano been laicized? That's my question. Golly, if anybody deserves to be laicized these days, I would certainly put him right on up there. And I can start to mention bishop after bishop after bishop, and they haven't even been removed, let alone laicized. And yet they have criticized very harshly the Holy Father. And so if that were true, why haven't they been laicized?
And yet is it not the blood of the cowards? Yet it is not the blood of the cowards that is the seed of the church. It is the blood of the martyrs. And Rome has been literally consecrated by the blood of Christians. As Tertullian wrote, we multiply when you reap us. The blood of Christians is seed. Again, my friends, speaking to me, but I believe to all of us, you cannot, indeed you must not, go to Rome and play nicely. The Queen of Martyrs has called you, and you cannot.
What is he talking about? The Queen of Martyrs called him. Well, if you recall, Bishop Strickland posted an article or gave an interview, and an article was posted about it in July of this year, where Strickland speaks of an alleged interior locution he received from the Virgin Mary, and he says the Virgin Mary is calling him to be a martyr for preaching the truth. And he seems to think that that somehow ties into his personal conflict now with Pope Francis. So, yeah, that's pretty problematic. I've already reviewed that part in a video a few days ago because we did have excerpts from this transcript. So I'll just simply put a video to link to that in the show notes.
Not parcel out truth in pieces. After all, were we not told that the truth would set us free? The synod has gathered cowards in Rome.
Oh boy, wow. So I guess Cardinal Mueller is a coward. That's interesting. So we really want to throw the Synod Fathers under the bus like that? That's wise. I mean, maybe there is a coward there in Rome. Maybe there is. But to speak this kind of in a general way, in a sweeping way of condemning the entire synod in this way, it is outrageous.
Those who not only refuse to die for our Lord and his church, but indeed demand that his eternal truths be changed.
So I guess Mueller is a coward who won't die for the faith and wants to change the faith. Okay, that's interesting. Not to mention the fact that I've showed you several Synod Fathers who have spoken out and very clearly affirmed the immutability of doctrine, including Pope Francis at the top of the list, who believes doctrine is immutable. The dogmas are immutable. He explicitly teaches that, as I've demonstrated on this channel many, many times.
And if you play nicely with these, then you mock the martyrs. And although playing nicely might ensure you are not removed, I again quote Tertullian. The usual complaint is, I have no other way of earning a living. The harsh reply can be, do you have to live? I ask you, Bishop, do you have to live? In fact, should you live when you have been called to die? Again,
Probably a reference to his interior allocution, alleged interior allocution, where allegedly the Virgin Mary has told him that he's going to be a martyr for preaching the truth. Allegedly.
It is easy to assert that no real damage has been done by the synod, but it has done untold damage in attempting to cheapen what Christ proclaimed was worth his life.
There might be some people at the synod who have attempted to do that. There's also plenty of people at the synod who have not attempted to do that. And so far, the synod hasn't actually accomplished any of that. Moreover, look, if you want to level that criticism against some of the people there who might be problematic, what about these guys who constantly twist people's words and promote fake news? What about these guys who are constantly bearing false witness? I mean, how many problems are they creating? You can't just point the finger at some of those people who have some shoddy theological views while ignoring your own errors.
And for which he indeed shed his precious blood. Would you now allow this one who has pushed aside the true pope and has attempted to sit on a chair that is not his define what the church is to be?
You heard that correctly, and it's about to get worse. But we're going to listen to that again. You heard that correctly. Strickland just read a letter with a ringing endorsement for it, thinking that it's beneficial for everyone. You heard that correctly. He just read a letter promoting that Pope Francis is not the Pope and that he's a usurper and that Benedict was actually the Pope. You heard that correctly. That is called Sedevacantism, that the see is currently vacant. Strickland found it beneficial to promote Sedevacantism to all these people here. You'll notice he never rebukes it. He never corrects it. He felt this private letter written to him was helpful to share to everybody there. And he gave it this ringing endorsement. Now think about it. If I opened up a letter written to me promoting sodomy over and over and over, the person is just promoting sodomy. And I tell you guys, hey, RNT fans, I got this wonderful letter written by a pious and wonderful Catholic. He loves Christ. He loves the church. And he's saying this out of love. And it's coming from a good place. And I want to read it to you because it's not just for me, but this is beneficial for you as well. And I read it, and they're just constantly promoting the goodness of sodomy in it over and over and over. Sodomy is the best thing, and they're just going at it. I mean, very clearly affirming this sin. And I read it to you with this ringing endorsement, and I never correct it, but rather I offer it to you as something beneficial and constructive for you. I think everybody would say, yeah, okay, Michael, you're clearly promoting this sin. And you know what? If I did such a wild thing, you would be right to call me out for that, which I'd never do. But I'm just saying, if I did do something like that, you would be right to call me out for that. Now, just replace sodomy with sedevacantism. And that is what we now have with Bishop Strickland. But it gets even more vitriolic. Listen to this.
Tempting to cheapen what Christ proclaimed was worth his life, and for which he indeed shed his precious blood. Would you now allow this one who has pushed aside the true pope and has attempted to sit on a chair that is not his define what the church is to be? As for the beast that was and is not, it is an eighth, but it belongs to the seventh, and it goes to destruction. You're probably smarter than I am. I'm not sure what that last part's talking about, and I didn't have the chance to ask.
God bless him. I mean, he seems like a nice guy, but this is so infantile. Like, God bless him, but are you kidding me? You're a bishop and you don't recognize that's a quote from the book of Revelation? What in the world? How did we get away from the standard of bishops effectively memorizing the scriptures to this. You don't even recognize the book of Revelation quoted to you when it's thrown in your face. Let me tell you what he said. Let me explain it to you, Bishop Strickland. What this man that you're giving a ringing endorsement for just said is he quoted Revelation 17:11. And you know what Revelation 17:11 is referring to? It's referring to the identity of the antichrist. I'll read it to you in just a second, and that's not just my opinion. That's the patristic interpretation. For those of y'all who don't know, patristics, that refers to church fathers. It's the interpretation that you'll find among the church fathers. And so what he just did, let me connect the dots for you. What he just did is he's saying Pope Francis is the Antichrist. That's what he just said. And it's sad to see a nice guy like this, but incredibly naive, almost infantile, say something like, you guys are smarter than me, and so y'all know what this probably means, but I don't. It's so sad. It's like, okay, well, maybe we need to go back to basic catechesis, but you're a bishop, so we shouldn't have to have this conversation. Let me read to you, again, a commentary from Andrew of Caesarea on Revelation 17:11, which he just quoted. The beast is the Antichrist. He is the eighth, because he arises after the 7 kingdoms for the deception and devastation of the earth. He is from the 7, because he arises from one of these, for he will not come forth from a nation other than those mentioned before, but as king of the Romans, for the defeat and destruction of those who believed in him. And after this, he will go into the destruction of Gehenna. So what happened there, Bishop Strickland, is you just read a guy who just said that Pope Francis isn't the Pope, and in fact, Francis is the Antichrist. And you didn't even know that that's what you were reading, but now I'm explaining it to you. That's what you just read. Now, that is a Protestant argument. That is not a Catholic argument. That comes from Protestantism. That is Protestant Reformation propaganda 101. That the Pope is the Antichrist. Bellarmine, go and read Bellarmine's treatise on the Roman papacy, and he's going to speak about how this argument is a Protestant argument. So that's what you just read, dear Bishop, and you admit you didn't even know what you were reading on that part. Now, I'm sure you understood the other part where he clearly says Pope Francis is a usurper and isn't really the Pope, and is attempting to steal the chair of St. Peter, but doesn't really sit in it. I'm sure you understood that part. The part that he's referencing here that he doesn't understand is the quote from Revelation 17:11. He doesn't even recognize that it's a quote from the book of Revelation. Now, just let that sink in. Those of y'all who have held Strickland in high esteem as just this great theological person who is going to come and solve all of the problems in the church and offer us guidance, he doesn't even recognize the Bible when it's quoted to him. Let that sink in for a moment. But wait, it gets worse. It gets way worse.
Christ has proclaimed the sanctity of life. It cannot be otherwise than sanctified, because he has created it and he has died for it. And yet this usurper of Peter's chair has
You heard it again. You heard it again. This is the 3rd or 4th reference to Pope Francis not being the Pope. 3rd or 4th reference by now. Listen again.
Wise, then sanctified, because he has created it and he has died for it. And yet this usurper of Peter's chair has counted life as naught, for he has endangered souls by proclaiming that they are justified before God as they are, with no need of repentance.
When did he say that? You are a liar. You're a liar. That is absolutely not true. In fact, here's what Francis does say. Quote, "We know that one who has committed a serious sin should not approach Holy Communion without having first obtained absolution in the sacrament of reconciliation." And do you want me to give you quote after quote after quote after quote after quote where Pope Francis tells people of the necessity of repenting of their sins. Don't forget another quote here from the book of Revelation, since we like to quote the book of Revelation. I have a quote from you from the book of Revelation. Liars will spend eternity in the lake of fire. That's a quote from the book of Revelation. Liars will spend eternity in the lake of fire. Those who bear false witness. There's a quote for you. Go and memorize it. Go and learn it. Let that sink in, because this is bearing false witness right before our eyes. And yet it even gets worse. It doesn't stop there.
And he has welcomed those who glorify abortion and has offered to correct no correction, thereby counting the lives of all those babies who have perished in this manner.
This is demonic. So now we're going to throw Pope Francis under the bus for promoting abortion? The same Pope who says that abortion is like hiring a hitman, and he says that over and over and over, and it calls it murder. It speaks of the evil of abortion. You're telling me that guy's promoting abortion? No, this is just the promotion of lies, is what it is. This is what the accuser of the brethren does. For those who might not be familiar with the Bible, the accuser of the brethren, by the way, is Satan. So this is what Satan does.
As nothing. Ignatius of Antioch wrote, "It is outrageous to utter the name of Jesus Christ and live in Judaism." In other words, it is outrageous to utter the name of Jesus Christ and then to live as though he had not come. Ignatius also wrote, "I have many deep thoughts in God, but I take my own measure, lest I perish by boasting. For I myself, though I am in chains, and can comprehend heavenly things, the ranks of the angels and the hierarchies of principalities, things visible and invisible. For all this, I am not yet a disciple." And what then, Bishop, shall make you a disciple? Be advised of this one thing: playing nicely with those who attack truth.
Like this guy, and like the bishop is currently doing. So just remember that, y'all. Faithful Catholics, evidently, according to these people, we don't need to play nicely with them. Now, I'm still going to say you need to do what's right. But if we were to apply their own standards to themselves, well, I guess we can take the gloves off.
Makes no man a disciple. Yes, the church welcomes sinners, but she welcomes them to the truth.
That's what Pope Francis says. So why are you saying this as if he doesn't actually say that? That's literally what Pope Francis has said. And he says, yes, come as you are, but you don't get to stay as you are. That's Pope Francis for you. Where's that in the letter?
Which is Jesus Christ. And if they are not living in truth, then she calls them to repentance.
And you yourself are called to repentance because you're not living in truth yourself. You're promoting Sedevacantism. And that is not a promotion of Christ's church. The successor of St. Peter is Pope Francis. Jesus's church is surrounded by those who are gathering and surrounding around Pope Francis. That is Catholic Doctrine 101. Currently, you're promoting views to the contrary. So you do not speak about truth. Do not speak about Jesus Christ. You don't get to speak about Jesus and truth when you're promoting falsehood and that which is contrary to Jesus's church.
How can we declare that we love when we would allow souls to perish by assuring them that conversion is not needed.
And you need to convert from this. You need to convert and turn away from this and come back to communion with the Catholic Church if you truly don't believe that Pope Francis is the Pope and if you believe he's a usurper.
Play nicely while the devil leads souls to hell?
Through schism. That's one of the ways that he leads people to hell. Don't forget that. By waging war against the successor of St. Peter. That's one of the ways this Satan can destroy your soul. Not just heresy, but the sin of schism, which is what is being promoted right now by the bishop, whether he realizes that or not. And it's very, very, very hard to argue that he doesn't know he's promoting that right now. I mean, are you kidding me? How many times did the guy tell you that Pope Francis is a usurper and is not the Pope? Obviously, you should know the very basics of what the definition of schism is, Bishop Strickland. You confirm people, do you not? And so when you confirm them, you expect them to know the basics of the faith, such as what catechism or what schism is. You expect them to know the basics of the catechism. So you should know what schism is. And you should know that this guy is promoting schism, and you're now promoting it as well. So it's so hard to argue that, you know, maybe Bishop Strickland's thinking is so infantile that he doesn't actually understand the letter he's reading. Well, you know, even if that's true, okay, well, should he be a bishop? If he doesn't understand the basics of this letter, should he be a bishop? And if he does understand the contents of this letter, and he does feel that this is worth spreading and promoting, as he is currently doing, then should he be a bishop? A bishop who's promoting Sedevacantism? I don't care what good he has done. I'm asking directly, a bishop who accuses the Pope of teaching heresy and is promoting Sedevacantism, should they be a bishop? And upon what basis are you going to say, oh, well, this German bishop shouldn't be a bishop either? I agree with you, he shouldn't, but two wrongs don't make a right. A bishop who is falsely accusing the papacy and is promoting Sedevacantism probably also shouldn't be a bishop. The lines are being drawn, and it's going to be interesting to see who promotes Strickland after this one.
Play nicely while Francis proclaims the devil's voice to be the voice of the Holy Spirit. The streets of Rome are now littered with cowards. Where is the one who will say with Ignatius of Antioch, now I begin to be a disciple? Let fire and cross, flocks of beasts, broken bones, dismemberment come upon me, so long as I attain to Jesus Christ.
Oh, Mystic Knight, you are a genius. You got me. You got me. Mystic Knight. Sorry, I'm still getting over this cough. You got me. He says, well, he endorses Schneider's catechism, so he might actually not know the definition of schism. Touche! I did a video the other day showing that Schneider's credo literally redefines what schism is. And he redefines it, instead of being a lack of submission to the Roman pontiff, he changes it to those who do not recognize who the Roman pontiff is. So you're right. Strickland does promote that catechism that has a faulty and novel and erroneous view of schism. So maybe you're right. Maybe he doesn't know what schism is.
As I said, those are challenging words.
Listen to this. He says those are challenging words. Now listen to the next part, okay? He already set it up for us on, he's praising this guy. This guy's great, and I'm offering this for your own contribution and benefit. You guys need to hear this. It's said in love. And now would be the time that Strickland would need to come around and say, well, you know, I don't agree with everything in here. You know, this stuff about Pope Francis not being the Pope, I don't agree with that. You know, this stuff about him being in favor of abortion and trying to change faith, I don't agree. Now would be the time to say that. Instead, he says, oh, this stuff is challenging. And listen to the rest.
And what really struck me,
what really struck me, you would think what you're going to hear next on what struck him was the part where he says Pope Francis is a usurper, right? Right? If you had money and you're a betting man, would you bet that that's what he says next? Well, if you bet that, you would have lost your money.
And what really struck me, one thing I've learned and continue to learn, I think I need to rid my life, the vocabulary, the word coincidence.
That's what struck him.
We need.
That's what struck him. That's what stood out.
To see God's providential hand working in our lives. Maybe not with whether we have a cappuccino or just Americano. But when we see significant things, we need to look with eyes of faith to providence. What is providential about this? And as you can imagine, when I received that letter, I was a little knocked back. And part of that was
the Sedevacantism part, right? Right? Wrong.
My friend's use of Ignatius of Antioch.
Oh, goodness. You would have thought, what set me back was this guy's schism. This guy doesn't even recognize Francis as Pope. Oh, my goodness. I care so much for this person's soul. I once thought he loved Jesus, and now he's in schism from Jesus. Let me go and win that soul back to Christ. Because I'm just shocked by that. Instead of that, I was just shocked by his use of Ignatius of Antioch. That's what you took away, Bishop Strickland? That's what you took away from this letter. Wow.
Because he was the first saint that I thought of. We celebrated Ignatius of Antioch fairly recently in the Novus Ordo calendar. But he's the first saint that I want to use as a model of this Emmaus journey.
Okay, here's the irony, okay? Irony for you. St. Ignatius of Antioch. What else is he known for? What else is he known for? Oh, yes, his ecclesiology. Oh, and what does he harp on in ecclesiology? Ah, yes, the sin of schism. Instead of saying what jumped out at me was this guy's use of Ignatius of Antioch, who decries the sin of schism, and yet this individual's in schism. I need to correct them and help them. Instead of that jumping out at him, he thinks that this is a profound use of Ignatius of Antioch, the same one who rails against schism over and over and over. And he wants to say, if you're not with the bishop, you're not with Christ. And now apply that on the universal level. If you're not with the universal bishop, if you're not with the head of the church in its visible form, the Pope, that is the dogma. If you're not with the Pope, you're not with Christ. That's Ignatian ecclesiology. This is Ignatius of Antioch. He speaks about the local level. He also speaks of the universal level, about how Rome presides in love, and the same concept of schism that he applies to the local level, just map that on to the universal level, and bam, there you go. You have a refutation of the letter that he just read to you, straight from St. Ignatius. And instead of that jumping out at him, this other contribution of Ignatius jumps out at him.
That I'm finally getting to talk about what I was going to talk about. I present to you for your reflection this morning as we come together in faith that the Emmaus story in Luke's gospel is our story. We are all that unnamed disciple on the Emmaus walk. And that's basically what I want to reflect with you on this morning. Hopefully you'll agree that that letter from a friend that I've just shared reminds us this part of our walk for every one of us here, men and women, clergy, laity, all of us. This is a very challenging portion of our Emmaus walk of faith. But as I mentioned before, and hopefully I can keep reminding myself and all of us to be joyful, to be aware this is what we're made for. Another saint that I want to highlight is Joan of Arc.
All right. So I played the rest of that. So you see that now as he goes into, the story of Emmaus and all that, now he's transitioning over into his main part of the message. I wanted you to see the context of that letter. Where in there does he say, I don't agree with this sedevacantist position. I don't agree with this slander. I don't agree with this or this. He doesn't. No rebuke, no correction, no statement of disagreement. Rather, what you heard at the beginning was a praise for this person. He loves Jesus. He loves Christ. He loves Pope Francis. And then he literally reads to us a letter filled with demonic vitriol from the mouth of Satan, and one that includes multiple claims that Pope Francis is a usurper and not the Pope. And he even tells us, hey, I'm reading this for y'all because it's not just for my own benefit. It's not just for me. It's for everybody. It's not just for me as a person. It's for everyone. By the way, can y'all still hear me? Let me know in the chat because I want to make sure that my microphone is working. The levels say it's working, but my headphones stopped working. So I want to make sure y'all can still hear me. So just put it in the chat. But he's clearly saying right here, he's giving this for your benefit. What was that benefit? He tells us at the end. Oh, well, it just shows us how hard it is to follow Jesus on the road to Emmaus these days. That's what we were supposed to take away from that. So in other words, he wanted to promote this message of sedevacantism. He wanted to promote this vitriolic and disgusting demonic attack against the successor of St. Peter. He wanted to promote that. He offered that to everybody for their own benefit. Nowhere corrects it. In fact, praises it all along, both before and after the reading. Now, again, if the tables were turned and I did something like that, everybody on YouTube would call me out. Or worse, if Pope Francis did something like this, but swap out sedevacantism with sodomy, everybody would be on top of him saying, look at this, and they would condemn him. Strickland does this, and it's crickets. Let me give you another one. What if Father James Martin did this? Everybody would attack him for it. And rightly so. But nobody will say a word when it's Strickland. He wanted to promote this sedevacantist letter. Make of that whatever you will. Is he a sedevacantist? I don't know. Don't know. But he is promoting sedevacantism. Even if he's not one, he's promoting it. Those of you who have, again, raked me across the coals for sounding the alarm about Bishop Strickland for about 1.5 years now, what do you have to say now? Let me guess, you'll defend him on this because you're a Strickland splainer, right? You'll defend him. You'll either try to splain it away, or you'll just agree with it and say, yeah, Pope Francis isn't the Pope. What of it? How many people, however, are going to watch this and say, you know what? I didn't agree with you, Michael, before. I thought you were wrong. But now that I'm seeing Strickland's true colors, now that I'm seeing this, you were right all along. I wonder if people will actually admit that. This is an interesting comment. Mike says, when I started saying this type of thing was straight from the devil, people told me I needed to tone it down, but it's true. Yeah. Look, the same people that are promoting Strickland would criticize someone like Father James Martin, Father Martin will dance around the issue of sodomy all day long and will basically give the impression that he doesn't believe it's intrinsically evil. He might not come out and say those words, I don't believe it's intrinsically evil, but he'll say everything that leads you to that conclusion. And everyone criticizes him for that, right? Because they see that it's the same thing. You're still promoting that position, even if you're not saying that view explicitly. You're still promoting it because you're saying everything that leads to that conclusion. Now, I ask you, take that same level of criticism, that same standard of criticism, apply it to Strickland and what he's doing. Does he say in this speech, I affirm Sedevacantism? No, he doesn't. Does he say, I believe the chair of St. Peter is empty? No, he doesn't. But he shares with you a letter that explicitly promotes that. He tells you, hey, this is wonderful. He praises it. He never condemns it, never repudiates it, never qualifies it, and offers it for your own contribution and your own benefit. 1 + 1 = 2. It's not hard. He might not say 1 + 1 = 2, but he just told you 1 + 1, and he leaves you to conclude equals 2. He might not say that last part equals 2, but he gave you the 1 + 1 right there. He's promoting Sedevacantism. I honestly wonder, is he doing this to test the waters, to see what kind of reaction he would get if he starts to promote the message that Pope Francis isn't the Pope? I honestly wonder if that is the case. Might be that. It also could be Strickland didn't even understand what he just read. That's possible. But that would be even more troubling because that would mean he's incredibly incompetent and should not be a bishop. Or it would mean he knows what he read, he doesn't agree with all of it, but he didn't feel it was necessary to correct those errors because he doesn't think they're big errors, which is still a massive problem because that means schism isn't a big problem. That means full communion with the Catholic Church isn't an issue. And again, he could have chosen to just have kept this private letter to himself, or he could have redacted some of those parts. Instead, he gave you the whole thing with no condemnation, rather a promotion of it. Make of that whatever you will. But if somebody tells you 1 + 1, you should conclude equals 2 and not be naive. Let's see. I don't agree with Lofton on some issues, but we can't just unsubscribe from people. The moment they make a video on something we don't agree with, you'll end up in an echo chamber. Well, I agree with you, but what do you not agree with me on? And tell me why I'm wrong. I get it all the time. People constantly say, Michael, I don't agree with you, or Michael, you're wrong. Yeah, but can you show me where I'm wrong? That would be helpful. Because usually what will happen is whenever a person attempts to show me they're wrong, they tell me something I've already accounted for and they're not aware that I've accounted for it. And then I'll tell them I've accounted for it. And then I'll give them a counterpoint that they haven't themselves considered. And then they'll realize, wow, I didn't know as much about this as I thought. And maybe Michael knows more about this than I do. That's generally how those conversations tend to go. But tell me why I'm wrong. Don't just simply say I'm wrong. Tell me why you don't agree with me. Don't just simply say it. But more importantly, all right, fine, whatever. You don't agree with me. My question to you is, do you agree with this? Do you agree with Strickland? Do you think that this wasn't promotion of Sedevacantism? Is that what you think? And the same people, the very same people that would say Pope Francis is promoting homosexuality because of this conversation that he had with a person, or he met with this person, or he's failed to do this, and they try to read between the lines, and they try to say, see, that's Pope Francis promoting homosexuality. Okay, take those same standards and just apply that to Strickland and what he's doing here with Sedevacantism, and tell me he's not promoting Sedevacantism. I don't agree with your faulty method with what you're doing about Pope Francis, but if you want to try to do that whole thing of let me read between the lines, okay, fine, do that here. There's several options here with Strickland. Either he is too naive to understand what he just read, and thus he's incompetent. So he doesn't even realize that he just promoted Sedevacantism. That's a possibility. I grant that that is a possibility. Or he knows, but he didn't think that it was a big deal to correct. In fact, he still felt it was beneficial to offer that view to everybody there, which is also still a problem. Or he was testing the waters to see what will people think if I implicitly promote Sedevacantism. Those are your options. What other options are there for what we just witnessed? Give me a fourth option. I'm willing to consider it. Mahovel, thank you for the super chat. Did we find out why article yesterday was pulled? I haven't heard anything. Some wild stuff going on with LifeSite News. I haven't seen why. Michael, do you think that Radtrads will continue the schismatic talk in using the new DDF document regarding transgender people? I'll actually be doing a video on the DDF document here in just a little bit. I think they'll continue to promote their dissent, and I don't think that they will hold their own accountable, such as Bishop Strickland. I don't think they will. And whenever he is removed, because he will be removed, whenever he's removed, they're going to paint him out to be a martyr, as Strickland is already painting himself out to be. But let me ask you seriously, if you're a bishop promoting Sedevacantism and you are opposing the Holy See in its papal magisterium, should you be a bishop? No. Is that traditional Catholicism? No, that's not. That's schism and dissent. Should he be a bishop? If he's done nothing else except those things, he shouldn't be a bishop. So whenever he's relieved from ministry, which he will be, whenever he is, I can't say that it was unjust. And says my comment was regarding Strickland. Okay, that's helpful. Thank you for the clarification. Let me go back and read your comment again. I don't agree with Lofton on some issues, but we can't just unsubscribe from people the moment they make a video on something. So you're saying you don't want to unsubscribe from Strickland just because of that, I guess. Or he says my comment wasn't regarding Strickland. Okay. Either way, I'm still asking, what is it that you don't agree with me on? But you're just saying you don't agree with me on some other issue unrelated to Strickland. Okay, I mean, I still like to know what it is, but all right, fair enough. So at least you don't agree with Strickland on this point. Okay, fair enough. Good. Thank you. And thank you, Mahovo, there for gifting a membership. I appreciate it. Do you wish Pope Francis would depose him? What would be the best course of action from the Holy See? I think that he should be deposed, but I also think that the German bishops, many of them should be deposed. Many of the Flemish bishops. I mean, if I were Pope, I would start deposing people left and right. But that's me. I know that's easier said than done. And I know that creates massive problems, because as soon as you start deposing Episcopal conferences and stuff, you might even have a massive schism and a creation of a new church. And that could create problems for centuries to come. I totally get that. I understand. But sometimes you got to do what you got to do. So, yeah, I do think that Strickland at this point should be deposed because of these actions. But I also think that many other people on the other end of the spectrum should also be deposed. I also think that Vigano should be laicized. and other people like that. I also think that, Schneider should no longer be an auxiliary bishop, because he's also saying pretty wild stuff. So I'm pretty consistent. If nothing else, I am consistent across the board. The same discipline standard that the rad-trads are held to, I hold also progressives to that same standard. I'm straight up consistent. And I don't think one should be disciplined and not the other. I think both should be. But if we're talking just about Strickland, yeah, I do think he should be deposed at this point. I mean, how dare he promote this? I couldn't believe it. How dare he promote this? This vitriol, this demonic message, promoting schism, again, vomiting out the voice of Satan in a letter. He promotes it for our own edification. How dare he? No. If a liberal did that, I would also say the same about them. He doesn't get a pass just because he's conservative on some points. You don't get a pass for promoting demonic content. And if he doesn't have enough discernment to realize that what he just promoted was demonic, then that still further proves my point that he shouldn't be a bishop. So no matter how this shakes down, I don't see how he should be a bishop. Might be a nice guy, but that doesn't qualify you to be a bishop. Do you think it would be beneficial for Pope Francis to call the German Flemish bishops and the rad-trad bishops to the Vatican for face-to-face counseling? Should it be public or private? I mean, look, before you remove somebody, yeah, talk to them. Okay. Maybe there's some help with that. Maybe there's some benefit to that. But if a person remains obstinate in some kind of grave error, there's only so much talking you can do. At some point, you have to remove them from ministry. And some people are not of goodwill. And so talking to them isn't going to do anything. At some point, you're going to have to cut it off. Didn't you say that you've had Strickland on the show before? Yes, I have had him on 2 or 3 times. But I haven't invited him back on ever since he publicly accused the papacy of teaching heresy. I've not had him on since then. And I will not have him on unless it is to correct him. He's welcome to come on if he's willing for me to challenge him and correct him. I'm willing to have a conversation with him, correcting him on his errors. But other than that, we don't have anything to talk about. Well, I don't want to talk about common ground when you are representing the Catholic Church and doing this. It's not like you're a Protestant. And it's not like you're Eastern Orthodox or something. At that point, the lines are pretty clear that this person isn't in communion with the Catholic Church. But when you represent the name of Jesus Christ in the Catholic Church, you're held to a higher standard. And so there's nothing to discuss until we get these issues out of the way. And so the only thing I would talk to him about is his errors. Other than that, we can't talk about the sacraments. We can't talk about anything else. We can't talk about the 10 Commandments. We have to talk about this issue. So, I mean, yeah, he's welcome to that extent. Other than that, I'm just not interested. And that goes for anybody else that I've had on. Schneider, I've had him on. He can come on under the same terms. Cardinal Zen, I've had him on. He can come under the same terms. He's not as bad. Fortunately, he's not as bad as some of the others, but I've seen some troubling things with him recently with the whole Dubia affair. So hopefully this was helpful for y'all in exposing the work that Satan is performing through voices within the episcopate. We can't just simply call out the liberals. You know what? I actually saw a statistic that indicates that now it's like less than 4% of new priests identify as progressive. Like less than 4%. It was something wildly low like that. Which means what? Which means What we're going to really be battling in the future is problems with radical traditionalism more than radical progressivism. Radical progressivism was horrible and still is, but it's much more conspicuous. I mean, a person who's promoting abortion or homosexuality, they stick out like a sore thumb. It's pretty obvious to spot them, pretty easy to spot them. Somebody who's a radical traditionalist, it's harder to spot their errors. And so we're going to end up dealing with that more. And that is also why you see me addressing the ratrads more than radical progressives. I address both of them on the channel. But there's two things. Number one, there's already plenty of people addressing the liberals, but few people addressing the ratrads. Number two, I'm sorry, the liberals are dying out in low in numbers compared to what we're getting with the radical right. So there's a need to fill the gap and speak about that. And that's why I tend to fill the gap and speak on this issue. But I'm consistent all around. I oppose dissent and schism on both sides with a passion that is equal. But I also recognize some errors are being addressed and others are not. And I'm trying to fill that gap. Okay, well, again, hopefully this was helpful. If it was, hit that like button and the subscribe button. You know, people are going to unsubscribe because of this video. I lost quite a few people on the last Strickland video that I did a few days ago. And I'll lose more people from this one, I'm sure. So try to help offset that, balance it out by hitting the subscribe button. And if you have benefited from Reason and Theology in the past, consider supporting me at patreon.com/Reason and Theology. This is how I support my family. If you don't want me to close down shop and go back to my secular career to provide for my family, then please help support me with what I'm doing here. Because without y'all doing that, I'm going to have to provide for my family in another way. So if people can't step up and support me to continue to do this, I'll just need to go and do something else to provide for my family. But I'm hoping there's enough people out there that have benefited from this content and are willing to step up and support me, not only with prayer, but also with their finances. So please consider doing that. There's also a PayPal and a GoFundMe link there in the show notes if you would rather use those platforms. All right, I will meet back with y'all in a little bit for another show on the New Dubia. We will see y'all later. God bless.
Are you a Catholic thinking about converting to Eastern Orthodoxy? Or are you a Protestant discerning whether or not to become Catholic or Eastern Orthodox? If so, I have the book just for you. It's called Answering Orthodoxy. It engages all of the arguments that Eastern Orthodox use against the Catholic Church. I respond to all of them. I show that they are in error, and in fact, they're inconsistent, because the things that Orthodox are objecting to are in fact found in their own tradition. So the fullness of the faith can only be found in the Catholic Church. Check out the book right now at shop.catholic.com for your copy today. Hey everybody, I'm so excited to announce I have begun an Eastern Catholic podcast that is affiliated with God With Us Radio. God With Us Radio is part of an Eastern Catholic faith formation program put on by the Eastern Catholic Bishops of the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops. And so God With Us Radio is putting out a lot of great catechetical material for Eastern Catholics so that people grow in their faith and they learn about the Eastern tradition in communion with Rome. And that's what I'm doing with this podcast, affiliated with God With Us Radio. It is called Union Without Confusion. If you go to unionwithoutconfusion.com, you'll see a list of episodes, and you will also see a new episode at least once a week on Mondays at 5 p.m. Central. So I encourage you, go to unionwithoutconfusion.com to take a look at the podcast and enjoy great content that focuses on the Eastern tradition in communion with Rome. I hope you'll check out the website and be blessed by the material. Please pray for this new endeavor. We'll see you later.